Alright, here we are into episode 42 of the Planet Zoo Experience, and today we're talking about the common wombat, the first Australian animal to be introduced into our series. Not only is it the first of Australia's many creatures that we are going to be showing off in this series, we're going to have a very interesting exhibit when it comes to the animal in question. If you can see, I am making a raised platform, almost like a plateau, or I guess it is a plateau. And the reason for that is we're going to have the top part of the exhibit, that is going to be the basic, above ground area where you're going to be able to see. But when we dig down, we are going to be making a second viewing area where you could see inside the burrow of one of these animals. Now, as we go on in the episode, you will understand just how important the burrow is of the common wombat. Now, onto the animal itself. Now, the common wombat has another well-known name, and that being the bare-nosed wombat. Obviously, if there's a bare-nosed, yes, there is a hairy-nosed wombat. A bit more rare, a bit more exotic, and quite honestly, not as large, which is probably one of the reasons they went with the common wombat. Scientifically, it is known as Wombatus ursinus, which means the wombat bear. Very creative, I know, but trust me, as we go on in the series, you realize that it is not nearly as bankrupt in name as some of the others. Now, it is interesting to note the bear part of the name, and that kind of has to do with the actual body shape of these animals. They are stocky, and they are hefty. The common wombat will reach roughly 3, almost 4 feet in length, and weighing roughly 77 pounds. When you realize how low to the ground they are, that really does make a difference. And if you notice, a lot of it is right in the rear. And that is partially an evolutionary defense mechanism, and we'll get into that in a moment. However, before we do, let's discuss some of the important aspects of the scientific nature of it. First and foremost, the closest living relative of the wombat is actually the koala. They do somewhat look similar, and with the koala bear sort of thing going on, I guess there's a bit of a connection. However, the more important part is the fact that they are the largest wombat species, and aside from animals like the red kangaroo, are the largest marsupials on Earth today. Now, the reason I brought up their rumps at the beginning of this episode is simply because they are their main form of defense. See, when running into their burrow to escape a predator, something like a Tasmanian devil or a dingo, they will use their cartilage-rich rear ends essentially to crush their pursuer against the walls of the burrow. So, essentially, the wombat is the king and or queen of twerking because they straight up end lives with their ass. And on top of all that, they, quite honestly, can take an absolute licking. Now, when it comes to infighting between the animals, it isn't that common. While they are territorial and usually solitary, on occasions, especially when it comes to the females, there are groups, or otherwise known as wisdoms, of wombats that will occasionally take residence in burrows. Now, from what I can tell, it's kind of tricky to pin down the social structure of the wombat. As I said, they're mostly solitary. However, they have been known, multiple families, to occupy the same burrow. Now, that may have to do with the fact that the burrows can reach anywhere from 6 feet 7 inches to 65 feet 7 inches, running across under Australia, and even having multiple different rooms that are pretty much for different things. I mean, some are for food storage, some would be for resting, and with multiple different entrances, it would almost be like an apartment building or a conjoined home. And not only may there be multiple wombats in one burrow, there may also be other species. like with many of the other animals that we've spoken about around the world, whether it be the aardvarks in Africa, the prairie dogs in North America, the burrows of the wombat are actually used by a ton of different animals. Just to name a couple, they also are used by reptiles, echidnas, birds, wallabies, and even their distant relatives, koalas. Many people don't realize that koalas do occasionally roam about on the ground and aren't 100% arboreal. And when they are on the ground, a wombat den is a great place to take cover from the dangers of the bush floor. Now, jumping into the animal's history, we get into probably my favorite part of it, and that is the massive extinct species that used to exist. And when it comes to the wombat, the only one that really has to come up that anyone cares about is Diprotodon. It was a 13-foot tall, 7,700-pound marsupial that lived from 1.77 million years ago to only as recent as 40,000 years ago. Now, this behemoth essentially was built kind of like a giant wombat, except it had a bit longer legs and almost more like the elephant of Australia at the time. Now, if you noticed the actual time frame that I gave for their life, they quickly went extinct after humanity first entered Australia, becoming what are now known as the Aboriginal peoples of the bush. Whether the Aboriginals were responsible for the extinction of the Diprotodon is still not 100% understood. They absolutely had some effect on it, there's no doubt there. However, the possible over-desertification of Australia due to changing climate definitely had a role in its life. Now, interestingly enough, because humanity was able to see this creature, it had eventually led to the modern mythical creature, cryptid, if you will, known as the bunyip, which honestly really matches the known lifestyle of the Diprotodon, that being a semi-aquatic, swamp-dwelling marsupial that, at least with the bunyip, was known to capture and eat human beings. Now, did the Diprotodon eat people? Most likely not. More likely it was a herbivorous species, just like the wombat, but who knows how aggressive they were comparatively. Now, the wombat itself was thought to have evolved roughly 40 million years ago, most likely branching off, still staying somewhat small compared to the Diprotodon, but still being a same or similar species, in akin to how the shrew and the elephant are relatively closely related. However, that's a bit more of an extreme example. Now, unfortunately, there isn't a lot of history that we know about the animal, and that's going to be a trend with a lot of Australia's creatures, seeing how it's really hard to find evolutionary processes in Australia due to how just disconnected they were to the rest of the world. Trying to get an idea of when certain species originally formed is really difficult when the last known connection to the rest of the world was before the dinosaurs. I mean, it's something that we're going to have to try to figure out how to rectify in the future, and of course, when it comes to this series, I'm going to have to find something to take the place of that time slot. But as for this animal, there isn't really too much to speak about when it comes to their evolutionary processes. Now, there is a little bit of cultural influence. Obviously, the wombat is a massive symbol of Australia, not quite being the same way as something like the kangaroo, but it absolutely has its place. For instance, it was pretty much the unofficial mascot of the 2000 Sydney Olympics. The wombat in question was, I'm not going to say it with an accent because I know I can't do it, Fatso the fat-ass wombat. Now, I'm just going to let that sit there as I describe what we're doing right now. We are adding mushrooms to the walls of the exhibit in an attempt to give it a little bit more life, and we are also going to be adding more tall grass once I realized, that they like more tall grass, and I didn't have nearly enough of it for the exhibit. So, on top of that, they were seen as a mainstream cuisine. Yeah, we're talking about eating animals again. Sorry, but that's just how it be. Animals are delicious. But it was mainstream cuisine by both the Aborigines and the European settlers all the way back when. And pretty much it was a very common form of food. I could only imagine it would be akin to, if you were to live in America, the early days of American settlement, where it was very common to pretty much hunt beavers to near extinction in an attempt to get a little bit of extra food. But that all came to an end in the 20th century when in 1999 they were made a protected species by the government of Australia, essentially ruining anyone's attempt to enjoy the... I don't even know how to describe how wombat meat would taste, I'll be 100% honest. I am curious though, if I ever go to Australia, because I've heard you can eat kangaroo, I'd really like to see what some of the other wildlife tastes like. And I swear, I will eat every animal of this planet at some point. But, with all that said and done, there isn't too much left for me to say. There's only one little piece of information that I didn't know where to fall in. I probably could have put it in the physical education of the animal, but at the end of the day, it's not really something that is their physical attribute. It's something they make from their physical attributes. And that is the fact that their feces, for reasons that we're not 100% sure of how and why, come out in cubes. Yes, they shit cubes. I didn't realize the shape of a turd comes from some evolutionary process. I thought that was just some weird physics explanation. But, alas, here we are. And with that last little bit of fecal education, here we are, the Wombat exhibit. I hope you enjoyed. And before you go, I have a little bit of an announcement. I've said it in every video since I had the idea, but starting at 6 p.m. American East Coast time, I will be doing a live stream on December 31st into the new year of 6 a.m. January 1st. It is going to be a charity stream. Hopefully I can make a little bit of money. I do want to aid my local zoo and game preserve if you would be so willing to come and join us. I will be playing Planet Zoo, maybe some Civilization, teach you a little bit about history, and after all that there will be a video release of some very big news that is going to be pretty much taking off, hopefully, in 2025. So, if you're interested, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, till we get into probably one of the most exciting animals and the most wanted animals in the game, the Conquerel's Sifaka. Thank you very much for watching. Go outside, touch grass, drink water, hug your loved ones, and bye-bye.